worry about.
So that was rather brief, and then we have a question and answer afterwards. And there's one over here. Apparently, you want to I don't have a problem. She said, my husband needs a new house. She said, all he wants to do now, and you have to remember this is caretakers of the introduction, is use his chainsaw.
That sounds dangerous.
So we were brainstorming for her.
How about planting trees instead of cutting them?
She said she can't interest him in anything else. There's like, she has an acre of land and there's no trees and stuff.
We're removed from it, so it's very humorous.
Right,
but
exactly.
For her, it must be torture.
Exactly. But she said she'd put it back together again for him because otherwise it becomes a So at this point I'm less concerned about than I am about her. But she wants to find out. But she said that somebody mentioned like models, building models or something. And she said he has in that railroad and looks to be interested. But like he did invent it. And if his grandkids come over, they'll go to it and they're interested. If the neighbor, if he's so far over, he'll invite the neighbor in for 5 minutes. And he doesn't want to do anything. So,
right now, it's just like, it's just bigger.
and she said it's hard. It's so tiny. Like the room is full. There's 2 feet on one side and 1 foot on the other side. So we decided, too. So much going on. I didn't make it to my calendar. And she said actually I felt a little bit better because she said all of the counselors from over.
Oh, that's not true. I was looking skating, really skating.
Well, to me, I'm very sensitive. They say people with ADD are extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned that, and I feel I've already felt that I've been really trying to do it. But I don't know who else would do it. And I want to. That sounds like a jacket that what's her name would wear.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I haven't heard from Teresa since, but last week she called me and she was off that evening to see a play. Where's Melania?
So like where's Will?
I can see her being moved too.
Oh yes, because when he first became president, they showed the pictures of her with these songs. I don't know how to feel like behind the line. I feel nobody says this. Like if she was Biden's wife. I feel like with Hunter Biden, but with her, it's like,
But typically, wives are there by their husbands when they politic. They go around complaining. Nowhere to be seen.
well, there's a Liz who said she's filed for divorce for you.
Yeah. All right. Why would she?
I died.
Don't make me get louder. I first want to say thank you to everyone for coming out today. I know our schedules are really crazy. This conversation is really important. It's regarding fair funding for our schools and the culture wars that are going on in our libraries and our schools. And we want everyone to leave here being sort of experts on this so that you can go and tell your friends and your family and your community members what you learned today. So just a few things, we have some snacks over here, there's coffee and tea over there. We're going to do a brief intermission, but feel free to get up and help yourselves to snacks. Just try not to talk too much. Our first speaker is Tara Probst. She was the first female mayor of Stroudsburg in its 200-year history, is that right?
Over now.
Yeah. So Tara now is in the House of Representatives, and last year was her freshman year. She was put on the Education Committee, and when she got on the floor to advocate for it, she did such a great job that they turned her microphone off. So, Tara Probst, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Maggie, how long do I have? Because I could talk about this subject for the whole meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't have to speed it up or anything. Take your time. You can
Okay.
talk for half an hour, and if we have time for Q&A afterwards, we can
Okay,
do
that
that.
would be great. So I'll give you the Cliff Note version, basically. Can everybody hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Number one, thank you so much for coming, and especially about our House Bill 1422, AKA Charter Cyber Reform Bill. If I had $1 for everyone that said, I didn't know that, how long has this been going on? What do you mean this is happening? I swear to you, I would die every day. Let me just say that. So I like to say that what I'm about to tell you is the best kept secret in Harrisburg, as I call it, since 1997. We have not had a charter cyber reform bill in 26 years. And I bet most of you in this room who aren't in education didn't even know that cyber charter schools were literally, I always call it raping and pillaging our taxpayers. And I want to go back to the beginning and tell you how this all started. In 1997, there was charter and cyber schools that came out. Now, of course, through the years, we know that cyber is very important. Every school district in Monroe County has a cyber program. Pocono Mountain, Pleasant Valley, East Stroudsburg, Stroudsburg, and my friends in Delaware Valley. I represent the Delaware Valley School District. So basically, it is a school choice of learning. When we were growing up, you were either homeschooled, you went to a private school, you went to a religious school, but there was no such thing of charter schools and no such thing of cyber schools, right? So the way that our public schools were funded were through the state, and then whatever the state didn't pay for, the property owners, taxpayers paid for. That's your school taxes on your school tax bill, which I always say, you know, renters pay this too, because if you own a place and you're renting it out, the rent that people need to cover are your taxes and your mortgage. I mean, no one's going to rent to somebody and lose. They at least want to break even or make a couple bucks. So even people who rent are being affected by this cyber charter thievery because their rents are so high. I want to tell you, in Monroe County last year, cyber charter schools took $40 million out of our pockets. I can't talk over the singing.
Yeah.
That's okay. So, the way this worked out was in 1997, there was a group of people that, you know, went to privatize education. There still exists today the Betsy DeVouses of the world, right? The Jeffrey Yasses of the world. And if you don't know who Jeffrey Yass is, Jeffrey Yass runs the Commonwealth Foundation PAC. The Commonwealth Foundation, he's, by the way, one of the richest men in the world, and he's the #2 richest man in Pennsylvania. He's got a political action campaign called the Commonwealth Foundation. He owns many of these cyber schools. There's 14 of them in Pennsylvania. We have the worst laws in the country, meaning we allow these 14 schools, the owners and private corporations of these schools, to take our money and not be accountable for it. So if you want to open up a cyber school, come to Pennsylvania, because you're going to be rich very quick. So when they, in 1997, made this law, they did what was called just an automatic payment for special education, right? A 3-tier, we have a 3-tier system here in our school districts. Tier number 1, if your child has an IEP, they might need 30 minutes a week for reading, they may be gifted, they may have English second language, they may need help with their math for an hour a week. It's all in an individual education plan, right? Then there's a tier 2. You need a little bit more. So basically, it's going to be more hours during the week. And then we have tier 3. Tier 3, and I've been in the resource rooms in schools. Tier 3 ranges from anywhere from total emotional support to I've had kids in wheelchairs, paraplegics that couldn't move. That's your tier 3. They are the most expensive to educate because they require special busing. They require special knowledgeable teachers who are trained in how to handle children with these type of conditions. So the cyber charter rules are every child who gets an IEP in these cyber schools, right, whether it's that half-hour a week or that hour a week, the school districts have to pay the cyber schools tier 3. They have to pay the max. There is no tier 1 and tier 2. There is no, okay, well, we were with them an extra hour, here's your bill. They get tier 3. Now, I want to give you some examples of what this means to our local school districts. If you were to be educated in the Stroudsburg Area School District, and you were on their cyber program, the Stroudsburg Cyber School Program, it costs the Stroudsburg taxpayers $3,000 to educate that child. If you were on a special education plan, it's between $12,000 and $14,000 in district. Out of the 14 cyber schools that we have to pay out to every month, because 300 of the Stroudsburg School District kids go to these outside cyber schools, we're paying $22,000 for the kid that is just in a different cyber school, and we're paying $39,000 for the special education child that may only need a half-hour a week. It equates to $9 million a year in the Stroudsburg Area School District, $15 million a year in the Pocono Mountain School District, where we're sitting right now, $8 million a year in Pleasant Valley, and East Strasburg, it's 9 million. So the issue that we have had is that these laws have not changed. And as a Democrat, and as my Democratic colleagues have tried to do over the last 2 decades, is change the law. If you want to send your kid to one of these cyber schools, that's absolutely your choice. That's a parent's decision. Maybe they're mad at the district. Who knows, right? We don't know. That happens. But if they want to be considered a public school taking our tax dollars, then they should be paid the same as our kids in brick and mortar. So that is what 1422 does, House Bill 1422. We say, if you want to be a public school, all schools should follow the same rules. And I want to tell you some of those rules. The Sunshine Law, open records. I want to tell you that a school district that has an abundance of funds come in, they're audited by the state. Their fund balance can only be, I believe, 10%, right, to keep your rainy day fund. Anything in excess in a school district has to go back to the taxpayers. Now, we all know that our taxes have only gone up over the last 20 years. And it's just coincidental that so has the cyber charter costs. So the people that love cyber charter are going to blame it on teachers and teachers unions. It's not it. It's the almost $1 million a month that my local school district has to pay corporations. So what really upsets me the most is the cyber charter schools, they don't have to give the money back to us, to our taxpayers. They have an abundance. It goes in their pockets. Isn't that infuriating that your tax dollars are going in a corporation's pockets? It's actually against the Constitution because no public dollars are allowed to go to private entities for this, for education. But they are considered public education based on the 1997 Charter Cyber Rule. So they're getting away with it. They do not have the same rules we do. And that is what 1422 does. It says, that's fine if you want to exist 14 cyber schools in Pennsylvania, but here's what your payouts are going to be. And we took every basic education down to $8,000 a student. We took the special education down to services provided. So, because let me tell you, you're going to find this. When the cyber charter schools get a hold of you and bring you to their web, suddenly you have an IEP because you're worth the top tier money. The IEP could be, you're so smart and gifted, we're giving you an IEP. This is what they do. There are basically a small percentage of kids that are not on an IEP in the cyber charter schools because they're getting $39,000 for that kid out of Strasburg, they're getting $42,000 a kid in Pocono Mountain, they're getting $16,000 a kid in Delaware Valley, and they're getting $28,000 a kid, I believe, in East Strasburg. It's either 28 or 18. I can put my readers on and look, but East Strasburg is the only one if I forget. It's 28 or 18. So suddenly they all have IEPs. When you see the commercials on TV that say, Commonwealth Charter Academy, a great way to learn. Your kids should be learning like this, and they have all the diverse population commercial. It looks so nice, like they're teaching in a classroom. Yet they're not. They're not. As a matter of fact, $35 million was spent of our tax dollars on those commercials last year. So when you see them on WNEP, and you see them on WBRE, and you see them on CBS, that's our tax dollars paying for that commercial. So all HB 1422 says is, you can't advertise anymore. We're not, Strasburg's not allowed to advertise, Pocono Mountain's not allowed to advertise, and if you spent your tax dollars that way, we'd all be throwing pitchforks at the school board. Are you kidding me? So I just want to say that. Let's go on to another topic. If the way that our taxes will be lowered is this, I just want you to think of we're going to throw out a basic number. If the school district's budget is $100 million, some are more, some are less, we know that, but let's just take it even $100 million. And they don't have to write $15 million a year in Pocono Mountain to cyber schools, and they don't have to write $9 million to Strasburg, and $8 million, and that money stays in their coffers. And when they have a budget every year, well, next year our budget's going to be $102 million, which means you've got $6 million more. Then this is when your fund balance is capped at a certain level, based on what the law allows it to be, and this is where rebates happen to taxpayers. But at the rate we've been going for 2 decades, it's never been like that because we're falling short because our payments to these outside interests are going up and up and up, that the taxpayers are responsible to get the school to their budget. So that's as simple as that, and nobody knows it until my big mouth got elected. Now everybody's gonna know it. So with that said, well, what can you do with the money? What can the schools do? I can tell you right now in Philadelphia, their roofs are caving in. They've got lead in their water, and they pay $157 million a year to Cyber charter schools. Can you imagine $157 million, what that would do for those public schools? Get those public schools back and be proud of, and people want to stay in them, right? But in our district, what it's going to do is it could be bringing languages back to schools. Everyone knows that you're going to need a second language in today's world. I'm personally taking Spanish now because my 5 years of French was nothing for me. It's going to bring back maybe after-school activity buses so kids can stay and participate and not go home to an empty house because both of their parents are working to put food on the table. It will bring in more mental health counselors. It will bring in reading specialists. It will do all the things that will make our communities safer and smarter. And when you have a safer and smarter community, you have less crime, you have less homelessness, you have less drug addiction, you have less alcoholism. That's what this money will do for our communities. So, can you imagine for 20 years, 26 years, we've been shelling it out. And after maybe 2 years, we'll be able to recoup it to where we can do all these things that we've had to leave behind, and we can do things that are for the betterment of our community and our students, and then suddenly you're getting the money back. And that's what every superintendent says. They say if this goes through, there will be rebates back to our taxpayers. We have the highest taxes per capita in the state in Monroe County, and we have a 62% free and reduced lunch population. People can't afford to live. Seniors are losing their homes. People are going homeless. We have kids that are homeless in the Stroudsburg School District and East Stroudsburg School District and Pocono Mountain and Pleasant Valley right now. They're living out of a car. They're being shuffled from a hotel from Family Promise. It's the most disgusting, saddest thing you'll ever see, and it doesn't need to be that way. While the corporate cyber schools are walking away with $50, $60 million last year in their CEO's pocket. And that's our money. It was $2 billion in Pennsylvania last year. So we know that the Commonwealth Court had a court case that said our schools are not funded equitably or fairly. Your zip code should not dictate education that your child receives. And in Pennsylvania, that's happening right now. Hold harmless was a law that went into place in 1992. And to make a long story short, it said, hey, school districts, you're basically going to get the same now. You're not going to get any more. You're not going to get any less in the future. It will rise with the changing times of inflation. But what your district has right now is what you're going to continue to get. So, what does that mean for us? Picture your school district in 1992. Did anybody here complain about your school taxes?
Yeah.
Nobody. Because of Pocono Mountain, East Stroudsburg, we had enough schools, we knew what our population was, we handled it, there was no problems. Let's fast forward through the decades. The kids from the western part of the state moved, families moved, they have so many less kids out there. The other side of the world, in northeastern Pennsylvania, between New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, we live in a great place. Who wouldn't want to live here? I say who wouldn't want to live here. I love it. Our schools shot through the roof, and we're still getting the same formula as 1992. And they're still getting the same formula on the West as 1992. So basically, the state is paying for so many schools up to 60, 70%, and we're getting only 15% from the state to cover our costs. So our taxpayers are paying for our school districts. Not fair. The Commonwealth Court said that's not fair. So now Governor Shapiro has a joint commission, both Republicans, Democrats, from the House and Senate, that are going to all 500 school districts and saying, What do you need? What does it cost you to run the school? How are we going to do this so that we can all get our fair share of the state money for schools? This is going to help Monroe and Pike County tremendously. Tremendously. To think that we're on an average of 15% from the state. My God, if it went up to 30%, that is hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is a big deal. We've got this that we must do, mandated by the court. We must fund our schools fairly. And then on top of House Bill 1422, the cyber charter reform, to give money back to our school districts, we're going to be living very happy, and we're not going to complain about our school taxes anymore, because they're going to be fair, they're going to be equitable, seniors are going to be able to stay in their homes, families are going to be able to afford the rents. There's so much to this that changes a whole community. So before I go any further, I just want to give you local numbers for us. Delaware Valley, if HB 1422 passes in the Senate, which by the way, they haven't even looked at it, please call your senator and tell them to pass House Bill 1422. It would mean $1.08 million back to Delaware Valley. Stroudsburg would bring back $3.6 million. Just in 1 year. This is year after year, by the way. East Stroudsburg will bring back roughly the same, but Pocono Mountain will bring back $8 million. Now, $8 million coming back to Pocono Mountain School District could make, it's just massive. It's massive, massive, massive amounts of money that just helps them get whole again. And then they get $8 million back the following year, and then they get $8 million back the following year, and then you guys are getting rebates because their fund balance is covered, their activities are covered, their schools are up to code, and now we can start going back to normalcy. But until 1422 passes, you can just count on the whole situation getting worse. I don't mean to scare you, I'm just trying to give you the facts. These are things that people in Harrisburg didn't want you to hear, and I have to be honest with you. I would be remiss if I didn't say this, because believe me, my advocacy made Rosemary Brown admit that there's something wrong with the special education payment, and she put a co-sponsorship memo out. Yeah. But she did. She took a step. She hasn't taken a step in 12 years, and she knew what was going on and didn't want anything to do with it. But now that you, the public, know, and you're calling her offices, and my newsletters are coming out, and she's in my district, and she's seeing them, she had to do something. She's not stupid. But just know that she knew this has been going on since the conception. So did Mario Scavello. So did Jack Rader. And I'm not saying they didn't do good things for this community. I probably don't agree with 99.9% of their views. And I don't mean to say that they're bad people. But I'm telling you, they knew. And I'm telling you, they didn't care. And they didn't make their taxes going up on everything but the real issue. So I'm just here to clarify that for you. I'm here to let you know what you can do. And you can call your senators and tell them to pass House Bill 1422. It was passed bipartisan. There were 23 Republicans in the House that signed on with us for this. 23, and guess what? There would have been more, but they knew they didn't have to. They didn't have to. It was passing because Jeffrey Yass, the owner of the Commonwealth Foundation, the Political Action Committee, funds a lot of their campaigns. And all you got to do is look at a financial report and see how many mailers the Commonwealth Foundation did for Rosemary Brown. The ones you got every other day. I was just so anyway, so that's that. And if I'm in a dumpster, it's because Jeffrey Yass got to me. So just know that I said it out loud. But no, but seriously, that's a fact. These politicians have had political gain over it. They didn't do what was right for Monroe County. They did what was right for themselves. And as your state representative or part of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, I would rather die than take money over a vote. I'll die first. This gig, it's not the end of my life. I won't do it. I will not never cave to this. It's important for my taxpayers. Okay, I'm just going to go around this way if that's okay.
Number one, are you sponsoring this 1422?
I'm a co-sponsor,
You are
on
the
it, yes.
co-sponsor.
Joe Cerisi is the main person on the
Sorry,
bill.
who's
Cerisi, C-E-R-I-S-I, Joseph Cerisi.
Thank you. I just want to mention also, according to Representative Jason Orchite, I think his name is, he writes that Pennsylvania has the 6th highest property taxes in the country. And that's a fact.
Yeah, but he voted against it.
Yeah, he's sponsoring another bill, 1670, which I suggest you look at. It's a funny way of not letting school boards get more money. So,
Oh, believe me, I mean, there's an example of, this is happening, a root cause, you've seen it over the decades, and you're still doubling down and going against it. For what? Check his financial reports. Okay, I'm just going, Linda?
Jeffrey Yass, our billionaire Pennsylvanian, in 1 year alone, in 2021, gave $9 million to the Moms for Liberty to get them started. Moms for Liberty is everything but moms. Has nothing to do with moms. That is such a great name they have. Or Liberty. So if people could be aware of that, $9 million in just that 1 year alone that I
1
checked.
year, they fund all of these things. It's insane. And it's insane, but he got away with it for 2 decades because the House and the Senate were run by the Republican Party. So even with a Democratic governor, if it doesn't get to the governor's desk, there's nothing they can do about it. If this bill has been out here for a while, 1422, written in different ways, and you don't have leadership, 102 majority, because we're 102 to 101. I would call myself the vote that passes this, right? Even though this wasn't yet bipartisan. This bill never even saw the House floor, never even saw the committee. But because we're Democratic majority, not only did it pass committee, and it unfortunately in the committee it passed, Democrats, Republicans, right? Not one Republican voted for it in committee, and it passed on the House floor in 2 consecutive days, because you need to pass it 3 times before you can send it to the Senate. So we did that on July 2nd.
So that was going to be my next question, because I was looking just to make sure. So with a Republican majority in the state Senate, what's the strategy for getting it passed?
The strategy is exactly this. From our newsletters and the bill actually hitting to the public, it caused a buzz. Nobody knew that the Macy's Day Parade that Commonwealth Charter Academy had, the big float, was paid by Pennsylvania tax dollars. Nobody knew that when they see those commercials, that it was our tax dollars. Nobody knew that when these kids are getting tickets to Phillies games for a gym class, that was our tax dollars. So now the word is getting out. There's a charter cyber school roundup page, and Sue Spica does it. It tells every district. So for example, Lisa Baker, I think she's got 21 of her 22 districts are begging her for cyber charter reform, right? That's a pipe. Rosemary Brown, all of us did it. I mean, it was like unanimous. Every one of them signed up. There's 471 school districts out of 500 that want charter cyber school reform.
Tara, that data is all in the program.
Okay.
It's a QR code to lead you to Education Voters Pennsylvania, and that's Susan Spica, her research. All of it is there. If you have a question about any school district, it tells you how much your district charges for cyber education and all the details.
It's wonderful. So, but the thing is, now that it's out there, it never saw the light of day since 1997 when it was passed, and then it was kind of like, yeah, you guys are good. It's out there, and now everybody knows about it. And now Republicans in the House, people are knocking on their door, Republicans, what are we doing here? So they're voting for it with us, So it has to happen in the Senate that way. They need the heat. Because if they don't get the heat and they don't do it, they're going to get voted out. And that's what happens. This is a big deal. So I personally think that the heat is on Rosemary, the heat is on Lisa Baker, but we got to keep doing it. We got to keep doing it because there's only 6 different votes there. We need to sway 6 people. And there's a couple Republicans over there that are hurting from it too. And they're gonna get the heat too. So I think that it hasn't even been sent to the education committee yet, though. That's what bothers me. Hasn't even been sent over. And the problem with the education committee, just like we have the majority on our committees, the Senate Republicans have the majority in their committees. So depending on who's on education, it may die.
You mean, in the Senate, it might not even get considered by the Senate Education Committee?
Right. They don't have to take it up.
Pressure on senators that are on that committee.
Yeah, they may not even take it up, so we need to pressure, well, even our local senators to say, hey, if you don't help get this through the committee, you know, we know you're part of the problem.
We know who we're.
Yeah, right.
You know I wrote it.
Well, I hope you're happy about it.
Well, if I was happy before, then, like,
Now you're thrilled for that.
you know.
I wish everybody had her brains. I wish everybody had her enthusiasm for public service. I wish everybody served the public the way Tara does. She will take on anything, including my little neck of the woods not being on GPS.
Thank you. And by the way, Maureen supported this bill, and also Maureen has been one of the advocates who's been pushing for this since she's gotten in, but it never saw the light of day.
So we're okay, you're friends, right? We're good.
Listen, yes, Maureen is all about this, and absolutely, I mean, all 102 Democrats voted for it. So, anybody else have any questions?
I had a question about tier 3 money that they're getting. So just because I'm a mom with kids in public school, I know the kids with hindrance. I know what they do. We know how many kids will be on
Zero. They don't take them.
but they're taking the money we pay for transportation. We pay.
200 of them.
Yeah, because we keep those items until then.
I mean, how in the world, on a cyber program,
Yeah, that's
are you going to help kids with really intense intellectual disabilities? How are you going to do that? You're not. I've been in these rooms, these bus pick up, and I love these kids because I'll tell you what, they're so happy. It's just from morning until, it's like the only break that maybe the parents have to go and do everything they have to do for these, for these kids. The public school helps them out. And I have no problem with that. I will never have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is that those cyber schools are taking that money that could be going into more services for these kids.
So, it seems like, this is, incredibly educational. The cyber schools take kids with a regular classification and they invest money in reclassifying them as special needs.
And part of 1422 says, we're going to tell you what they are, and then you can have them, because that's what they do. They suddenly turn them into an IEP.
And then they get
more money.
substantial,
And,
very substantial.
and by the way, the graduation rates of cyber charter is only, I think it was 57% the last time that I left. Now look at your school districts. I guarantee you, none of our local school districts are under 92% graduation rates. I can pretty much bet the ranch.
Yeah, we're 96% at
Right.
Pocono Mountain.
Right.
So, I have on the 6th of October in Hazelton, basic education peer funding commission is going to have a meeting.
I just want to stop everybody. This is what I was talking about in the court case where the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania said you have to fund your schools fairly. So that's what he's talking about. This is not 1422, but it is a definite help for our area to get more money from the state.
And this is the bipartisan commission that you.
Right.
I called a couple of committee, and commission chairs, and co-chairs, because I want to testify on the 6th of October in Hazelton at state law commission meetings. It's very difficult. Let's say it's verging on impossible to like get a slot.
It is, and I'm gonna tell you why, if I may.
I mean, like a regular person like us. Why can't we get a slot to testify? If we got something that is potentially valuable,
I can answer that. I can answer that.
well, maybe you could help.
I can answer that.
Okay.
If you want this done quickly, and they know what they have to do, they got to start funding our schools fairly. They're talking to, I don't need to say it, you're an expert at a lot of things, but they're talking to the experts. They're with the business managers of every school district. They're with the school board. They're with the superintendents. They are talking to people that actually are in the heart of education. That's their job description. That's what they go to, that's what they live, breathe, eat, sleep it. They can tell you the numbers of the formulas. That's who they're talking to. We already know the issues that you and I have and we all sit here have, because that's what the court case was over. So they don't want to have to, it's never a waste of time. No question is a stupid question. Like my mom always said that. The stupid question is when you don't ask it, right? I understand what you mean. But if they did that in 500 different school districts, they wouldn't even be out of Pittsburgh yet.
So, I watched a video of the hearing in Allentown, and the woman who's she's the co-chair, she's got a bifurcated name, I forget exactly what it is, but it was this big time expert from one of the universities who specializes in this type of formulas, all of that good stuff. And so he testified, and after he finished testifying, she asked him, and I was impressed, because she's a Republican. So she said, you're talking about the current situation. Have you looked at new sources of funding?
And I know where you're going with this, Jacob. You're going the way of gas. And look at, but Governor Wolf had his commercials in 2018. Texas does it. 17 other states take oil and gas extraction. We know that.
And
It funds $17 billion. It literally funds Texas's education.
Right. Texas, Republican state.
But, okay, so Jacob, just like I told you the other night, it's out there. These memos are out there. They won't pass the oil and gas industry owns the Republican Senate. At least the education doesn't. It won't get past one senator, not one. So it's never going to pass. We have that's old, and I don't need to say it. That's 10 years old. We've been trying to do that forever. We have bills out there for it. We know it's never going to get anywhere, but we do it anyway to show we're trying. This is something that can happen. And if you hear anybody say, oh, they don't care about our kids, maybe we wouldn't be leaving the district if the district was good, and I should have school choice for my kid. Okay, great, we do have school choice, and absolutely, everybody deserves what's best for you, your family, your child. Not everybody fits into the same mold, right? I understand that. We understand that. We are still allowing these cyber schools to operate, but if they want to be a public school, they're going to have to operate on the same rules that we do. And that means when you have $45 million that are going to your CEO, that should go back to these school districts and the taxpayers. You made your money, you paid your staff, you have more than enough to educate these kids, but now it's a racket, and now you're taking our public funds. So all we're saying is, we're not taking away your schools, we're just not giving your CEO $45 million next year.
Yeah. So here's my question. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a racket. I think that the money from the political action committees are such, and the dichotomy of thought between the political parties. What's the best path to contribute to? Because you've got to have money to get the information across to people. I can tell this person or that person to vote.
Yeah. So look, like PSEA, that's the public school teachers and the public school system. they don't even have nearly the money that Jeffrey Yass has, right? So, but that, it would be to support the candidates that support this. So if you know Maureen Mann is your candidate, and you know that this is something she's supporting, believe me, throw a couple bucks her way, because it helps her put that on the mailer. I support 1422. If you want to learn more about it, hit the QR code and it'll tell you all about it. So that's, you know, that's really, it's, I hate money in politics, believe me, I hate it. It makes people do bad things.
One of the,
Jacob, hold on for a second. Is there anybody else that has?
I just want to make a statement.
I just want to make sure nobody else has a question because you're on the 4th point. Go ahead, John.
I just want to say the way Ms. Darren's concerns, that all of us get out there and talk to our neighbors, talk to our friends, talk to our families, make people aware. I've been going around now, I've been late for school for 2 years, essentially. And not a day goes by that I'm not talking to somebody about these kinds of issues. Other issues too, maybe, well, not even necessarily more specific to my district, they're widespread as well, Brickville and other areas. But I have found that a lot of people, they don't know. And when you start to explain it to them, well, this is how, I even have it on the cards that I have about rallying the community in support of financial reforms, the two that we're talking about here today in Harrisburg, and how do we do that? By getting all of our community, a lot of people are disengaged. Try to get more people engaged in our communities. Everyone who's sitting here today can participate in that. We don't have to write $1 million check to a PAC and sort of like pay somebody to do it for us. We all can do that ourselves.
Exactly. And John, on top of it, right? School choice is still, you still have a school choice. That's the most important thing. We're not taking away your school choice. We're just making their payments fair and equitable. Like, if they want to be considered a public school, then they just have to be treated with the same rules. So that's where we're at, and that's really the bottom line. We don't want to take away your school choice. We just want to make sure that it's fair and equitable.
Perfect segue, because I want to say that the right does write on this idea that the left wants to take away school choice. But we don't have school choice. Right here, we have 4 mediocre cyber schools to choose from. School choice in the Pocono Mountains is not like school choice in Philadelphia, where you have brick and mortar schools for the sciences, for the arts. We have cyber schools to choose from, where half of the kids don't even graduate. They come right back into our communities, and they can't even work at Walmart.
They come back 2 years behind to the public school. That's a fact. And also, I'm sorry, just on top of that, a big fact is, say this kid in the cyber school, say he's truant, he's not signing on, he's not going to class. Your local school district has to pay to go to the magistrate when they say, why isn't your kid in school? And do an educational plan for this kid that you're not even teaching. So they put that on the public schools and they're not even teaching them. So this is how insane it is. And then let's just say you're paying for a kid in Mount Pocono, right? And he's going to the Cyber Charter Academy. He's living in Mount Pocono. The parents say, we're moving back to New York, but he stays with Cyber Charter Academy. You're still paying for him, even though he's living in New York. They make sure that they do not report when a move happens. I mean, this is what they do. So it's the local school district to go through, where's all the kids in the district, who moved, where did they go? I mean, it's crazy.
is the right to know law applicable to the service?
No.
Why not?
I just told you. Deregulation on private companies.
But Education Voters PA did file rights notes, and there's data in here. One of those QR codes will lead you, it'll tell you they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Target gift cards, IKEA gift cards, things like that.
But they don't have the sunshine law though, so they don't have to. Well, Jacob, this is what I'm telling you. It's a racket. It's been going on because people are making money off of it.
But how can right to know not apply to an entity that's funded with taxpayer dollars?
Because it's a private company.
All right, let's take a break now. So we can-
And that's what the children, that's what makes it public, but they're private entities. And the law is written. Pennsylvania has the worst law in the United States. It is pro cyber charter. A place like Michigan, I love that governor, by the way, too, Gretchen. She doesn't even allow it. She doesn't allow cyber charters in her state.
Well, how about amending, or putting forth a piece of legislation?
I mean, you make it sound like that we can do that. You can't, we have to get this passed before we can even think about doing something like that.
Not reaching.
We can't do anything until this passes.
We can't.
Because this is the law, Jacob, it's not gonna pass. I mean, you need 2/3 of the general assembly to pass an amendment. We can't even get the Republicans to look at this House bill yet. So I'm not spinning my wheels on something I know never is gonna happen. I need to spin my wheels on something that is this close to happening.
Okay, I'll just make a comment. Some of you may remember early on when this bill was first passed, and
I can't hear you, Ben.
we had a congressman that was Democratic Congress. His name is Joe Batista.
But Joe Batista used to be a state representative.
Exactly. State representative. And there was this guy named Kelly Lewis who came from somewhere, I don't know where. And we was sitting at the wheel. And Kelly Lewis won. 6 months later, Kelly Lewis was gone. He retired. He resigned. So we get a guy from the Bronx who runs a bagel shop. His name is Marius Cabell. And Mario promised you that those school taxes are terrible. And I am going to get rid of them. And I promise you that. Next election, he told you the same thing. Next election, he told you the same thing. Then he started sending you birthday cards, all of that stuff. And you went out and voted for him. No, I'm serious. You know, that's what we did. But don't be fooled. So what you can do is respond to that birthday card, okay? Say, okay, thank you for the card. Now what about 1422?
How about that? Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, these are, and he, by the way, he told you, he pretended he was a Democrat, and he was never was. So don't be fooled by that. And what you need to do are the things that help you, your family, and help you make the right choice.
Yep, so I do want to say something, Maggie. I swear to God, I'm just going to talk about one more thing and I'm done.
Oh, you're fine.
When you used to hear remember, Maureen Madden was the only Democrat for a long time, right? And all you heard was HB SB 76, eliminate school taxes. You all know that you don't eliminate a tax. That money's gonna come from another place, right? You don't just eliminate taxes. So what they wanted to do was put a 1% increase on our sales tax, take it up to 7%. So who's that gonna hurt? Number one, it's gonna hurt only the people that don't have it and can't afford it already. And number two, how are you gonna run a school budget for 500 schools based on the economy? You don't know what is gonna happen 1 minute to the next. I mean, like, it was the most ridiculous bill out there that the Republicans didn't even pass it. He's gonna go and say, John Blake didn't pass it, because John Blake was a Democratic senator. But what he's not telling you is neither did 9 other Republicans, because they knew it was a bad bill. So it never passed the House, never passed the Senate. It was all propaganda, and what it did was it took it away from the Jeffrey Yasses of the world and these cyber schools just continually taking from your pockets. So I'm not lying, this is 100% of the truth, and they know it, and now hopefully something will get done. The jig is up.
English teacher they had here, those Bible programs, and like if you go to Lancaster,
But he was like,
they make it place. So that was good. But I think like
Like this place. Like this place. I've been a temp there. They play games. Raise and said about how, you know, you get to
But I think they should know this. They need to know. It is, you know, what the you don't throw it out
I just want to say thanks for listening, ladies.
Oh, thank you so much. I was just telling you where I want to be you when I go.
Oh, it's over there, okay. All right, I'll just be over here sitting down.
Anyway, but thanks. If you have any questions, just reach out to my office or call me.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Although you need your minimum speaker.
All right, we're going to start the second half of our program. It's about book banning.
more
There's
than
a lot
book
to be
banning.
said about book banning. Our speaker has spent her career helping Holocaust survivors write their memoirs. It's not necessarily about the specific experience of the Holocaust, but more about what happens beforehand, what's happening in our communities when this stuff starts, at the point where we can stop it. And I just want to mention too, I have some resources back here. There's a list of banned books in Missouri. In Missouri, they're actually banning a lot of French art history because a lot of that artwork depicts images of rises in fascism throughout history. So those are banned. States like Tennessee, they have a state rep in Tennessee that said that he wants to burn the banned books. And they actually did have a book burning gathering, I guess we'll call it. And I also have new data from PEN America. They're the group that has been keeping track of all the book bans and challenges, and they put out a new report this week. So all that information is back there. It's also in your programs. This is probably the most important thing that I want to share with everyone, because if you have a problem in your district or even your local library with people who want to ban books, this policy is for the a lot of the issues that we hear about, like at Stroudsburg with the book Speak, for example, they never actually read the book, so they couldn't fill out the form to complain about it. So these policies are your best friends. Now that being said, Jeanette Friedman.
Basically, I've been a storyteller for 50 years. When I started life, we lived in Union City, New Jersey, where my mother was what we call the Mikva lady. She was the lady who took care of the national affairs. She was a Holocaust survivor from Warsaw, and my father was a Holocaust survivor from Hungary. And they came to America penniless and pregnant with twins. And my mother got a job working at this ritual bath in Union City, New Jersey, down the block from the convent. And the first thing I remember, and I was very, very little, I couldn't have been more than 2 years old, the nuns would bring us books. Little golden books, little fairy tale books, books about all different kinds of little things for kids. And I fell in love with books. My twin brother and I would read to ourselves and start making pictures. By the time I got to 8th grade, I was the editor of my yearbook. And by the time I finished college, I knew how to put out a newspaper with one hand tied behind the back. I started with something called hot lead. Does anybody know about hot lead printing? They would have this pig, a thing of lead, and it would go into this little crucible behind this really humongous, what looked like a glorified typewriter, and they would type out a sentence, and the sentence would get spit out, put on the side of the thing, and it would be upside down and backwards, and they would put it on a table, and you would have to read your newspaper upside down and backwards to make sure that there were no mistakes, and then they put a piece of paper over it after they inked it, and that's how I learned how to be a publisher. When I finished college, I became a reporter for Jewish media. I worked for one of the most fancy Jewish magazines in the world. I interviewed Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sumner Redstone, Joan Rivers, Ralph Lauren, Donna Karen, Abner Mikva, who was Bill Clinton's lawyer, Carl Sagan, the head of NASA. I gave up on trying to remember everybody that I interviewed. But there's one thing they all have in common. They all loved books, and they all talked about books. And I still love books. And the first day I met my husband, 50 years to the day he died, I walked into his office. He was wearing a blue serge suit. He had a handkerchief in his pocket. He had a pipe in one hand and a book in the other. And I said to him, because I was impressed, right? And I said to him, "What is that book in your hand? Are you reading it for a class, or are you reading it for fun?" And he said, "I'm reading it for fun." And I said, "Send me a man who reads." And from that day on, we were inseparable. And we built a book collection of over 11,000 books, which I am now trying to distribute to different organizations and different people. Now, what is this thing with books? Why am I so attached to books? I'm attached to books because books can take you anywhere in the world, anywhere out of the world, anywhere under the world, into outer space, into places that never existed. Books take your mind and crack it wide open. Books tell you everything you ever need to know about anything. And it's true. Because I asked something, do you all know who Carl Sagan is? Because a lot of people have never heard of him. Okay? I asked Carl Sagan, how did you get so involved in outer space? He said, I was sitting on a bench in Coney Island. He grew up in Brooklyn, went to Lincoln High School on Ocean Parkway, and went to Coney Island to sit on the benches and look at the stars. And he asked his teacher in Lincoln High School, what are those things? And the teacher said to him, look it up. That's how people learn. They look it up. Now, I know that banning books is a real serious thing. You know, we make light of it even now. But banning books is one of the first things that fascists do for a very simple reason. They don't want you to know how to think. They don't want you to put two and two together, to put ideas in your head that will lead you to question what they are doing. Now, what disturbs me is that everybody here is above a certain age. I don't see parents of young children, and I don't see young adults here at all. And they're the ones who need to hear this message more than all of you older folks who know exactly what's going on. I mean, I'm basically preaching to a choir here. But the idea is, if people take away the ability for you to decide what your children can read and not read, if they take away the ability for you to know the difference, because it's basically knowing the difference between good and bad, because if you read a bad book, you know it's a bad book. And if you read a good book, you know it's a good book. You can tell. I mean, if you can't read it, it's no good. If you can read it, it just makes you turn the pages, it makes you want to know more, it makes you care. But if you have no books to choose from, then what do you do? Now they say that you can read books online, and you can get books online, and you can do stuff like that. Reading on an iPad is not the same as holding a book in your hands. It's just not the same. Because when you look at a book, it's direct between your eye and your brain. You know? And it really sinks in. Whatever it is, whether it's science fiction, whether it's a horror book, whatever it is, it becomes a part of your neurological, you know, process of thinking. So every time, you know, I go to the post office and I'm mailing a book, they ask me, does this package contain dangerous material? Yeah, absolutely. It contains ideas. It contains stories that a lot of people don't want you to know. The books I publish are being banned. They're being banned in Michigan, they're being banned in Missouri, they're being banned in Tennessee. I went on academia.edu because it shows me everybody who downloads the book, Why Should I Care? Lessons from the Holocaust, which I put where? I put it over here, okay. Here it is, okay. I wrote this book in 2009 with a friend of mine who's a right-winger. Yes, Jeanette wrote a book with a right-winger in 2009. Sounds incredible to some people in this room, but I did. And the point was that we were trying to teach people how to think. Why should I care? Why should you care if, and the book starts with Kitty Genovese being stabbed. Why should you care if somebody's being stabbed and you don't pick up the phone and call the cops? Why should you care if students are being shot at Virginia Tech University and you don't try to stop the killer? By the way, the killer was stopped by an Israeli Holocaust survivor at the University of Virginia way back when. Why should you care about what scientists say when somebody in a uniform tells you to do something and you do it because they're wearing a uniform, even if they tell you to kill somebody with a little electric dial because a person doesn't know the answer to a question? That was the Milgram experiment.
Yeah.
There was another experiment with a guy named Zimbardo, where in Berkeley or one of the California schools, he set up a fake prison, and he had fake prisoners and fake wardens, and within 2 days they had to end the experiment because people were actually getting hurt. That's how people are. If you don't educate them, if you don't show them the right way to do things, they're going to do whatever comes easy. And I don't have to tell you that right now in America, all the wrong things are basically coming easy because our schools have stopped doing what they're supposed to do, which is provide the materials for our kids to come out of that system knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to add, knowing how to subtract, knowing how to read. well, let me put it this way, knowing how to sign a check, knowing how to sign a contract, and knowing how to sign a voter registration form. Because one of the things that we've discovered is that if you can't write cursive, anybody can feed you anything about the Constitution or the Declaration, and you can't go back to the original and check what it really says, because you can't read it, because that's the way they want it to be. Now, I was just mentioning to somebody, why am I so head up on this stuff? Well, in the early 70s, I moved to New Jersey with my husband from Brooklyn. And we had kids in the public school system. And Lyndon LaRouche set up tables for school board candidates on United States Postal Service property and tried to convince us that, number one, we're creating a nuclear holocaust, and number two, our children should not be taught certain things in school. My husband complained, wrote a letter to the local paper as the commander of the local post of Jewish war veterans, and 2 days later, they set fire to our garage. So I know how important books are, and I know how important reading is, and I know how important education is. And it's really strange, because why would people want to do that? Ask yourselves. They want you to hate gay people, so they're not going to let you read gay books. They want you to hate Jews, so they're not going to let you read books about the Holocaust. They want you to hate black people, so they're not going to let you read books about black history. They don't want you to know about sex education, because then the perverts can be fought against. But if you don't know anything about birds and bees, and some Christian evangelical pervert comes and tells you Jesus wants me to teach you this, and then rapes you, then what? They don't want you to know anything. They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to think and work. I mean, think about what this does when you can't put a book in your hand and learn. And it doesn't teach you what you need to do in order to get done what needs to be done. Like everybody here was asking, what are we going to do about the bill that Tara's trying to get passed? And Tara says, well, call your senator. Not enough. Not enough to call your senator. Sorry, it's not enough. In February 2017, I decided to write a letter to every senator. And some guy found out about it with a camera. A black guy in New Milford, New Jersey, my own hometown, went to a place where I was auditioning for some stupid movie. And he heard me talking to my friend saying, I'm going to Washington, I'm writing a letter to the senators, I'm fed up. Donald Trump wouldn't rent me an apartment, he called me a kike. He said he doesn't rent to kikes in the N-word, threw me out of his office with the F-word, and that was in 1975. I come up here in 2015, I tell people, he's a thief, he's a liar, he's an adulterer, he tried to screw his own daughter, he let Howard Stern call his daughter a piece of... He cheated on 3 wives, he raped a 13-year-old. I mean, I'm a journalist, I know all of this. And you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to know he cheated at Koch with the skating rink in Central Park. He cheated when they redid the Commodore Hotel over Grand Central. He was a crook from day one. And I come up here and I tell people, this is who Donald Trump is. You can't just fight it by saying, well, we're just going to let it go. No. You fight fire with fire. He wrote a book, The Art of the Deal. It was the art of the squeal. Him squealing about his ego. And nobody here paid attention. Nobody. Hillary didn't fight him the way you can't fight these guys by being polite. How did I know that? From reading books, from being out there. So I go down to Washington and this guy follows me around with his camera and I give my letter to every senator, including Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. I say, those two need at least. And they ask me, why are you doing this? I said, because I want my grandchildren to know that the only way we're going to get things done in this country is by putting your on the line and getting down there and confronting them face to face. To mail a book like this to Israel costs $32. To mail a book like this to another student costs $3.25. This book is free on the internet. It's free. Why did I make it free? Download it. Because everybody should read it. Why should everybody read this book? I don't know. I'll give you an example of some of the titles of the chapters. Let's see. Silence equals death. That starts with Kitty Genovese's murder in Kew Gardens. Or Forest Hills, I don't remember. I'm not looking it up now. I don't remember in my glasses. The second one is called The Snake Made Me Do It. Now, why did the snake make me do it? The snake made me do it because I don't want to take responsibility or accountability for anything that I've done. And even if you don't believe that the Bible is the Word of God, the story itself is the story. And the story is, God is walking around the Garden of Eden like he doesn't know where Adam is. He goes, where's Adam? He knows where Adam is. He wants Adam to say, I'm sorry, I did the wrong thing, hold me accountable. But Adam said, you gave me that woman, you see what she made me do. And God said, you're out again, have a nice day. Where did we learn that? In a book. What book? The Bible. Right? But it's in a book. It's in a book. Okay? Now, the next one is choices. We will have choices to make. What kind of choices do they make? You have all these books to choose from. What are you going to choose? You're going to choose porn? Or you're going to choose something like a Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan, which explains exactly what this planet is in relation to the rest of the universe, where we live on a tiny speck. If you're standing on Pluto, you can barely see it. It's like a tiny blue dot on a page, where you have all the pictures that are made out of lots of little blue dots. It's just a pixel. We're just a pixel in the universe. And everything that ever happened in all our entire history happened on that little pixel, and yet we have the nerve to think we're the most important things in the universe. And we kill each other just to say, I want a little piece of that pixel and it's mine, and I'm going to kill everybody till I get it. You know where I learned that? In a book. In 1979, I was very, very pregnant with my son. And this guy named Phil Donahue, who had a talk show, I watched it, came to New York for his first attempt at a Cincinnati to reach a national audience. And he booked Madison Square Garden. And my sister-in-law called me up. And she goes, yo, Phil Donahue's going to be at Madison Square Garden. We got to go. I got tickets. So we're standing on 8th Avenue going into Madison Square Garden because Ian Rand, holy mackerel. I read Atlas Shrugged, and I read The Fountainhead, and I read Anthem, and I read those 3 books that taught me selfishness sucks. Anyway, so here she is, and we're online, and people go, who's the guest? Who's the guest? And they go, Ian Rand. I go, oh, right, great, terrific, a real writer, a real book person. So we're sitting in the audience, and she goes on and on and on about how corporations are wonderful, and how they should be allowed to do whatever they want to do, and that women should never, ever, ever be president or head of an army or be in an army, and, they shouldn't be linemen, and they shouldn't be cops, and, Arabs are horrible, and all this crap, right? So I raised my hand. And I'm out to here, and my hand's down to here, and if you don't believe what I'm telling you, you can check it on YouTube. I watched it. It's real. and she's spewing all this crap. And I said to her, I said, excuse me, but if corporations do whatever they're allowed, I used to agree, I started by saying I used to agree with you about everything. Of course, as a teenager, it makes sense, you know. I want everything, it's all mine, and and I'm entitled, right? So I said to her, you know, when I was younger, I agreed with you. Now that I'm older and more educated, I don't agree with you anymore. I will not answer that question. She assumes that she's on my level, and I want you to know about 3 minutes earlier, she said, I don't give a damn about my critics. Did she not say that? And you were respectful. And I was respectful, and she accused me of being completely disrespectful. But I read her books. And she has rape scenes in those books that are like, you know, she was asking to get raped. And the whole notion of what those books are about are exactly what has poisoned America to this very, very day. It's like Paul Ryan and the GOP and Alan Greenspan cloned her brain and took her policies and threw them on the American people. And how did I find that out? In books. I had a friend who was negotiating with the Germans for restitution money after the Holocaust. And he was specifically looking for money for slave labor, not just for Jewish people, but also for Poles. Right? And what did he discover? He discovered that the only way to prove that we had a story to tell was by the thousands and thousands of memoirs that were written by Holocaust survivors after the war to explain to people how sneaky fascism is, and it sneaks up behind you, and before you know it, you're the other, and you're being separated from society, and your belongings are being taken away from you, and your children are being ripped from your arms and put into gas chambers like my brother was from my father in Auschwitz. And you wonder, why don't these books convince Americans that they have to watch what's going on around them? That they have to recognize when their politicians are doing exactly what the politicians in Europe did when they wanted to distract their populations from the crap they were pulling to blame one group, so everybody would focus on that group, and they would get away literally with murder and stealing and looting and making war and murder. Remember, Hitler didn't start by killing the Jews. No, he didn't. He started by killing Germans. He started by killing imperfect Germans, imperfect German children, and imperfect German people, you know, veterans of wars who were wounded. He called them food wasters, and it was called the T4 program. And when people started dying from COVID, and Trump didn't lift a finger, I realized what happened. Because Jared, I read the papers, and Jared told him, well, look at it this way. Connecticut didn't vote for you, New Jersey didn't vote for you, New York didn't vote for you, and California didn't vote for you. And that's where it is. So forget about it. And then he got his orange makeup on his mask, so he decided nobody should wear a mask. Where did I learn that? By reading books. These are all things they don't want you to care about. These are things they don't want you to know. This book, after Choices, 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 we wrote, Freedom is a Privilege. I keep telling people up here, young people, who tell me, oh, I don't vote, both sides suck, they're just disgusting, both of them together are horrible. There's no point in voting. I said, yeah, first of all, there's such a thing called the lesser of two evils, if you want to look at it that way. But the other thing is, if you don't vote, and if you don't run, and if you don't care, then you're going to be left with nothing. You're going to be left with nothing. How do we know? Because that's what happened in Europe. People were left with nothing. And here, you tell people, you gotta rally, you gotta go, you gotta do, you gotta speak out, you gotta fight back on their terms. Because you learn that in books. You learn that when people fight back and really mean it, they win. I remember who was with me on the march in Washington, the Women's March, after he got elected. A whole bunch of us. Linda Schwartz was there. A bunch of people. I had a sign. I had one finger, right? And my sign said, this one finger is worth millions of dollars to corporations. Because corporations on their own only get one vote. And they're spending millions of dollars to get you to vote their way. This is your main weapon. Where did I learn that? They don't want you to know these things. But I'm talking to you because you know that they don't want you to know these things. And I don't know how you're going to get this message out to the young people who need to know these things, because there's no way to get them into a meeting like this. That's the problem. The other thing in this country, for some strange reason, is that knowledge is not respected generally. I was just talking to a young woman. She said, you have a degree, nobody respects it. Up here, certainly not. When I moved up here, my next door neighbor started giving me crap for having a college degree, a bachelor's degree. He said, I bet you don't even know how to fold a king-size quilt. What the? You don't know how to do anything because you're a book person. Really? Watch me. And I told him, I can hang a fixture, I can hang drapes, you know, the drapes with pulleys. I can hang those, I can change a light fixture, I can change a light switch, I can change a socket. In the old days I could hook up telephones. I could do all kinds of things. You know why? Guess. I read it in a book, and I learned how to do it by reading in a book. I bake chocolate rubber, I bake chocolate cake, I bake all kinds of stuff. How did I learn how to do it? From a book. They don't want us to read, they don't want us to think, they want us to be bots. And when we don't even care enough to stand up for our own children, because where are the young parents here? Where are they? They're not here. They're not here, they're not learning anything. How are they going to know what they have to do? That's the question. How do you make them budge? How do you blow them out of their complacency and their selfishness to get them to understand they're hurting their own children? And I don't have to tell you what's happening to trans kids in our schools. I don't have to tell you what's happening to gay kids. I don't have to tell you what's happening to black kids and to Hispanics and to other minorities around here. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you want to bring out a book that says, here, let's explain how these things happen and what these kids are about. No, you can't do that. We're only allowed to make fun of them and make sure that we get them so upset that they never show up in our classrooms again. I'm telling you, I brought this book to the Pocono Mountain School District, and they threw it in the garbage in front of me and said, we don't want our kids to grow up liberal. Nicole Pressman downloaded this book from academia.edu and is trying to get it banned. The book is free. Go on academia.edu, download it and read it. If you have choice of choices, freedom is a privilege, then we have Jiminy Cricket. What's your conscience worth? Right? And then, of course, words of will. Every genocide starts with words. Every single one. And like Henry Heinz said, where they burn books, soon they will burn people. And he was right. My family, my husband's family, my aunt's family, and many of my friends' families were all burned by the same people who burned books. Then, of course, there's the lure of the dark side. There's something about people like Donald Trump, people who are evil, that seem to attract a certain kind of person that influences them to follow in their footsteps. And one of the things we need to do is figure out how to stop that before it starts. And I have a way to do that. Okay, we know words can kill, because it all starts with words from lying politicians and propaganda. We know there's murder by music. Music was used in concentration camps. Music was used in Rwanda. Music was used in a number of other genocides where people murdered their neighbors to music on the radio. Then you have heroes in waiting. This is something people don't understand. You're not a hero because you're a hero. To be a hero, you only have to do one thing else. You're not going to be a hero 24/7. So you have to appreciate the people who step out and do what they have to do, and then they come back, and they're not a hero anymore. So everybody is a hero in waiting. We're all waiting for the one opportunity where we can do the right thing to help one person to be a better person, or save a life, or do something important for one person that changes their life. That's what a hero is being about. Then there's the bold and the brave, and that chapter is about the partisans who fought back in Warsaw and Łódź and other places. And denial is not a river in Egypt. Okay? That's what we suffer from in this country. We suffer from a severe case of denial. We don't want to know. We want our drugs, we want our booze, we want our TV series, we want our porn, we want our food, but we don't want to know anything that makes us uncomfortable. We just don't. And you know what? Reading certain books make people uncomfortable. So what do we do? Tara's trying to get a bill passed. We want books like this in our schools, and we can't get anything done. You know why? Because I can't go alone to a school board and say, put this book in the library. Tara can't go alone to Harrisburg and say, let's pass this. You know, we're waiting for people to do the job that we need to do. Why did I go to Washington? I went to Washington because I wanted my grandchildren to see what I was doing, whether I'm doing it here or whether I'm doing it in Israel. I am not standing around waiting for somebody else to steamroller me into some kind of a fascistic society where they're going to tell me what I can and cannot do, what I can and cannot read, what I can and cannot wear, and where I can and cannot pray. No. We need to train our children to know the difference. Now, there is a program that is very, very good. And by the way, I have to say this up front because it's a major issue. In the Jewish community, in the 70s, when we started teaching the Holocaust to the general population, and I understand that there are two ways to teach the Holocaust. The Jewish people have to teach the Holocaust to themselves a certain way in order to commemorate those who died. When we talk about the Holocaust to non-Jewish populations, we have to explain, this is not a pity party for 6 million dead Jews. This is an example of what happens when people don't pay attention to their politicians, when they stop voting, when they stop caring, and they turn their backs. You understand the difference? One is the process of genocide, and the other one is commemoration for the people who need to commemorate their families. But the lesson is you need to be politically involved. You need to read everything you can get your hands on so you know the difference between the truth and a lie. I mean, think about it. Think about all those people I interviewed. I interviewed Ruth Bader Ginsburg. How did she know what she was doing? Books. How did Carl Sagan know what he was doing? Books. How did Adnan Victor become a lawyer? Books. How did Dan Goldman become head of NASA? Books. I mean, if you don't convince the schools to do the right thing by letting your kids
read books that may make them uncomfortable? It's crazy. Life is not comfortable. Life is not a bowl of pitless cherries. Kids need to be prepared to live in a hard world. And one of the ways to do that is to give them books to read that explains, all these books on these tables that Maggie put out there. These are kids who went through hell to get to know who they are themselves. These are people who went through difficulties and overcame. If kids don't know that they can overcome and they're only told life is wonderful, they'll never be successful. They never will. And, I don't know what else to say, but after doing all these books and reading all these books and writing all these books and moving to Pocono Mountains, I went into culture shock and I still got over it. So, anybody who wants to ask me questions, they can. You can find me on Prime, you can find me on YouTube, what?
I just want to say, I have to go and I'm already late. That was really awesome. It's, what you're also saying is if we don't pay attention, history will repeat itself.
Yeah, well, when you see the movie on Prime, I start like this. A very wise man told me that if we don't, what we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And I said, for 50 years, I've been trying to teach people to learn from history, and I feel like I've been, pardon my French, pissing in the wind. And that's the first sentence in the movie, and that's the last sentence in the movie, which is after January 6th. The movie starts in 2017. Takes place in 2017. He showed up at my house last spring and said he wanted to finish the movie. I completely forgot about it. He finished the movie, and I said, well, we have to end it the way we started. Because for 50 years, I've been telling people to learn from history, and we haven't learned anything. So, the book is free, and, my mother promised her mother in the Warsaw Ghetto when she was leaving that she would write her story. So my mother wrote her story, and after one publisher published it with all the mistakes and historical errors, my husband and I took it back and redid it correctly. So this is available. And if you want to read any of these things, I gave a whole bunch of the books to the Friends Library in, Mountain Home Paradise. Mountain Home Paradise Library. So all these memoirs are there. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, because I'll tell you whatever you want to know.
What's the movie? How do we see it?
Oh, the name of the movie is Never Again Starts Now. And it's on Prime, and it's also on Tubi TV. And it was produced by a guy named Jamon Lewis, Jamonlewis. And, I did it because I wanted my grandchildren to don't rest on their laurels when your government is not being right. I mean, when your government is hurting people and it's against human rights and it's against women and it's against black people and it's against immigrants. And this country was great because we had people coming from all over. Were we ideal? Hell no, we were so far from ideal. It was pathetic. In the 30s, this country was packed with Nazis. And we couldn't get in because Breckinridge Long said, you can't come in. By the way, you know where I learned that? In a book. And, we weren't allowed to come in because he decided that we were a third army, an infiltrating army from the Germans, spying for the Germans. Yeah, okay, the Jews were spying for the Germans. Any more brilliant ideas? Okay. So that's how they kept us out. And they turned the St. Louis away. They didn't want us here. And when you leave New York, and when you come up here, and you ask people, this always gets me, you'll appreciate this. What's the percentage of Jews living in the United States? Anybody want to guess? What?
4%?
Percent of the US, percent of all Jews worldwide.
Well, Doug Mastriano had it right, 2%. He wants us deported. He wants us deported, he said so when he was running, and then he scrubbed it off Twitter. He put it up on Twitter that he wants the Jews, the 2% that destroyed the armed forces, deported from America. I said, where's he gonna send us, Auschwitz? But he took down the post, because he figured it didn't help him any. I mean, think. He bought the mailing list from Gab, which is the website where the guy who shot up my daughter's synagogue in Pittsburgh came.
Message is received from Linda Zapp.
Oh, you just sent me a message.
Oh, sorry. You didn't turn off my phone.
Okay, so, I think I answered the question. Any other real questions?
Repeat the name of the movie again, please.
The name of the movie is Never Again Starts Now. And believe me, I had no idea it was going to end up on Prime. I'm not making any money on it. I just sent it to my kids, I sent it to my family, and I said, watch this, and then tell your kids what they gotta do. Because, you can't not do nothing. My grammar stinks, but that's fine. Every artist in this book, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Monet, Degas, Manet, Rembrandt, they've all been banned in Missouri. Missouri. Elie Wiesel, Anne Frank, the Holocaust, banned in Missouri.
This event was put together through the Top of the Mountain Club, which Betty is our president.
I'd like to introduce Maggie. She did not introduce herself. Maggie Hartman worked very hard to get the criminal job. We're also very grateful to Tara and Jeanette for such an informative, timely presentation. Let's give them a hand. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Most of the faces in this room I recognize. Some of you I do not recognize. I'm pleased to see you too. And I just want to say that part of the mission on Top of the Mountain is serving the community, and we do that through education. And it doesn't matter what party you are, we don't care. When we have a message, we want to bring it to you, so you are an informed person, an informed citizen, an informed voter, and an informed community person who can spread the word out there and let other people know the facts. Okay, I know that. We try to be timely, and if you have any questions of me, fine. If you are a Democrat and would like to have some literature, our information is on the table. If you are not, then don't feel compelled to do so. And I see a hand over there. A question for Betty.
Yeah, on the last 2 pages of this flyer today has QR codes with all the information. How many of these did you print? I'm picturing printing 1,000 of these and handing them out everywhere. Just these last 2 pages.
Well, what we can do, Linda, is we can take these 2 pages with the QR codes and make 1 page out of these 2 pages, so you don't need all of this.
Yeah, this has got to get out to the public. Everyone's got to post it on Facebook, everywhere, and constantly.
Well, thank you, Linda.
Oh, good.
We have 2 more, hopefully 2 more. the law enforcement, victims, the impact on the families, how to, what's the word? How to get rid of your record?
Expunge.
Expunging your records, which even though someone does something as a child, it stays with them for life. So, we want to thank you for coming. We'll be in touch with you, and we look forward to seeing you again. And we hope you enjoyed this presentation.